There were places in the universe no one dared go and names no one dared speak. But the rule was simple. It had only one condition, one command. Do not wake the human. They broke it. The Vrain Dominion was dying. Once, their empire spanned dozens of systems, stretching across the Perseus arm of the Milky Way. Now it was a shattered husk, torn apart by the war with the SCI-FI Dominion, a species of brutal conquerors who did not negotiate, did not retreat, and did not show mercy. The Vrain were outnumbered, outgunned, doomed. But they still had one last chance. The expedition. Captain Tavlek Kari stood at the bridge of the scavenger ship Valkyr, staring at the dead planet before them. Excerpt 4, a barren world orbiting a dying sun. Captain, we have confirmation. The anomaly is here. Kari turned toward his second-in-command, Vice Captain Relkaer. The officer's pale blue skin was drenched in sweat, his long-fingered hands clenched together in anxiety. They had risked everything on this mission. According to centuries-old records, there was something buried here, something so dangerous, so forbidden, that it had been sealed away by civilizations long extinct. The only record they found of this place was an ancient warning. Do not wake the human. But they had no choice. If this human was a weapon, they needed it. Because if they didn't find a way to break the SCI-FI Dominion, their species wouldn't live to see another decade. Kari took a breath. Begin excavation. The countdown to their greatest mistake had begun. For 3 days, the excavation drones tore through the blackened rock and buried ruins. At first, they found nothing but rubble, the remains of civilizations so old they predated even the Vrain archives. Then, on the 4th day, a breakthrough, metal. And not just any metal. It was untouched, unblemished, indestructible. Vrain plasma drills, capable of slicing through warship armor, did nothing to it. Scans revealed that the vault had been built using an unknown alloy, one resistant to every form of energy detection. The warning. The entrance was massive, a towering gate stretching hundreds of meters high, lined with strange human symbols carved into the metal. Then they found the message. It was written in a dozen extinct languages, but the meaning was the same. Do not wake the human. Kari felt a cold shiver crawl down his spine. How old was this warning? Who wrote it? And why did they all say the same thing? Vice Captain Relkaer hesitated. Captain, should we stop? Maybe this is a mistake. Kari clenched his fists. Stopping now meant giving up on their only hope. We keep going. They had come too far. The order was given. The vault door was opened. For a moment nothing happened. A deep, suffocating silence filled the air. Then the lights flickered. Not the lights of their ships, the lights inside the vault. Power. Something inside was waking up. The Vrain warriors stepped back instinctively, gripping their weapons. But it didn't matter. No weapon they had could prepare them for what was coming. The ground rumbled. A hiss of escaping gas echoed as the vault door groaned open, revealing a chamber of impossible technology. Massive conduits, flickering hollow screens, and at the center, a single containment pod. It was humanoid-shaped, towering at nearly 3 meters, its surface lined with ancient cables that pulsed like veins. Inside, suspended in an amber-like gel, was a figure. The human. Designation Ethan Cross. And his eyes just opened. For the first few seconds, Ethan Cross did nothing. Then he breathed. A deep, slow inhale that sent shockwaves through the chamber. Then he moved. The liquid around him boiled away instantly, and the containment pod's locks snapped open. The human fell forward, landing on his hands and knees, gasping. His skin was pale, his muscles dense, his eyes glowing faintly. Then he looked up and saw them. The Vrain warriors, their weapons raised. For a moment no one moved. Then Ethan spoke. And every single Vrain collapsed to their knees, clutching their heads in agony. Because his voice wasn't just sound. It was power. A resonance of something old. Something buried deep within the fabric of the universe itself. Where am I? The sound rippled through the air like a command. Vice Captain Relkaer gasped, his mind assaulted with visions, burning worlds, shattered fleets, and the memory of something far worse than war. Ethan Cross wasn't just a human. He was something else. Something the universe had tried to forget. The Vrain made a fatal mistake. They assumed the vault had only one lock. They were wrong. The moment Ethan woke up, so did something else. Across the galaxy, in the darkest corners of forgotten star systems, things began to stir. Dead stars flickered back to life. Ancient warships, hidden beneath alien worlds, activated. Old machines, built before recorded history, turned their sensors toward Excerpt 4. The truth. Ethan Cross wasn't imprisoned. He was sealed away because he had been the last failsafe, the final guardian standing between the universe and something far worse. Something humanity created. And now the failsafe had been broken. In the darkness of space, a single beacon activated, broadcasting a single word in an ancient human dialect. Released? The Vrain didn't have time to process what they had done, because something was coming. Their ships detected unusual energy signatures across the system. Massive shockwaves rippling through space as if something old was waking up. And Ethan? He stood up. His body still remembered the war, even if his mind hadn't fully caught up. He turned toward the stars, his glowing eyes narrowing. You should have left me asleep. His voice was calm, almost sad. Then, from the depths of space, something answered. A whisper. A presence. Something alive. Something hungry. The universe had one rule. And now that it was broken, there was no going back. The moment Ethan Cross opened his eyes, the universe trembled. The air inside the vault was thick, heavy with the weight of 1,000 forgotten years. The dim amber glow of the chamber flickered, struggling to stay alight. Ethan's lungs burned as he took his first breath in centuries. His heartbeat thundered inside his chest like a war drum, slow and methodical. He staggered forward, his bare feet touching the cold metal floor, and suddenly, memories, flashes of images, fragments of a forgotten past, surged through his mind. Explosions tearing across alien landscapes. A fleet, vast beyond imagination, burning under his command. A war so catastrophic that the stars themselves seemed to scream. And then, darkness. A prison. A tomb. A warning. Ethan fell to his knees, his breath ragged, his fingers curling against the metal ground. His body felt wrong, too light, too fragile. Something had changed. He looked up, and for the first time he saw them. Captain Tavlek Kari and his Vrain warriors stood frozen, their weapons raised, but their fingers trembling. They had prepared for this moment. But nothing had prepared them for him. The human was wrong. Not in the way most species were unfamiliar, but in a way that felt unnatural. His eyes weren't just seeing them. They were looking through them. Vice Captain Relkjaer took a step back, his mind reeling. He had spent his life studying ancient species, deciphering myths. But this wasn't a myth. It was a warning they should have listened to. Kari swallowed hard. He was a soldier, a warrior of the Vrain Dominion, but right now, he was afraid. He lifted his plasma rifle. Human. Identify yourself. Ethan blinked. His mind processed the words. Not in the way someone remembered a language, but in the way a machine rebooted an old program. He understood them. But he did not answer. Instead, he lifted his hands and saw them for the first time. Something was missing. He felt it, the absence like a phantom limb. Power. Strength. A connection to something far greater than himself. He clenched his fist, and the air around him vibrated. The Vrain staggered back, their weapons shaking in their hands. Kari's grip tightened on his gun. I said, identify yourself. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Then he spoke. Where am I? The moment Ethan spoke, the galaxy reacted. Across the stars, hidden relics of an ancient war activated. On a distant moon, a forgotten beacon flickered to life, transmitting a signal older than any known civilization. In the heart of the ZYX Dominion, a warlord's sensors detected an energy pulse unlike anything recorded in history. And deep in the void of space, something else stirred. Something old. Something that had been waiting. Vice Captain Relkjaer's instinct screamed at him to run. Instead, he forced his voice to steady. You are on Exert 4 in the Perseus Arm. He hesitated. How did you explain to a being older than your empire that you were the ones who broke his prison? Ethan's eyes narrowed. Perseus Arm. The words meant nothing. His memories were fractured, but one thing was clear. This was not his time. Ethan stepped forward. The Vrain stepped back. Kari tightened his grip on his plasma rifle. Stop right there, human. Ethan stopped. Not because of the command, but because something inside him shifted. A dull pain, an itch at the edge of his mind. A feeling of wrongness. He exhaled slowly. You shouldn't have woken me up. Kari scowled. We need your help. Ethan's expression didn't change. And then, in a movement faster than anything their sensors could track, he was gone. A blur, no, a ripple in space, and suddenly he was behind them. A Vrain soldier gasped, only to be grabbed by the throat and lifted off the ground effortlessly. Ethan's fingers tightened. You need my help? His voice was cold. Unreadable. Why? Relkjaer's mouth went dry. Because if you don't help us, we're all going to die. For a moment there was silence. Then, slowly, Ethan released the soldier, letting him collapse to the ground. His head tilted, eyes unfocused. And then the memories came back. The war. The enemy. The reason he had been sealed away. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. You don't understand what you've done? At that moment, the first beacon finished transmitting. Far beyond the edges of the known galaxy, something heard the signal. Something vast. Something that had been waiting. In the cold void of space, a pair of ancient, mechanical eyes flickered open. It had found him. And it was coming. Kari barely had time to process Ethan's words before their ship alarms blared. Warning, unidentified energy surge detected. Vice Captain Relkjaer turned to the monitors. His blood ran cold. Something's happening outside. The team rushed back to the surface. What they saw made their hearts stop. The sky was burning. Above Exert-4, a tear in space itself had begun to form. A black, swirling abyss of impossible energy. And from within it, something was stepping through. Ethan's eyes locked onto the distortion. And in that moment he remembered. He remembered what the universe had feared so much that they locked him away. It wasn't him. It was what was coming after him. Ethan turned toward Kari. Run? Kari's voice wavered. What? Ethan's expression darkened. Run? And then the first shadow stepped through the rift. The Vrain had broken the rule. Now they would suffer the consequences. The sky split apart. A jagged wound in space itself rippled above Exert-4, swirling with an unnatural darkness. It was not a simple tear in fabric. It was something deeper, something alive. Vice Captain Relkjaer felt his throat tighten as he watched the black rift pulse like a gaping wound. He had seen many horrors in his lifetime: war, genocide, the extinction of entire species. But this was something different. The air grew heavier as if the planet itself was suffocating. Then the first creature stepped through. It was tall, its shape shifting like liquid metal, a humanoid shadow with eyes that burned like dying stars. It had no features, just an emptiness that absorbed all light. And then came the second one. And the third. And then hundreds. The sky boiled with their presence, an unnatural tide of darkness pouring from the rift. The Vrain staggered back, weapons shaking in their hands. Ethan Cross didn't move. He just stared at them. Because now he remembered. 1,000 years ago. That was when the war had begun. Not against another empire. Not against aliens. But against something humanity had created. Ethan closed his eyes and suddenly, he was there. A fleet of ships burning in the void. A planet shattered into dust. A whisper in the back of his mind, promising something beyond understanding. They had been called the Echoes. They weren't alive. They weren't machines. They were something else. Humanity had tried to weaponize them. They had failed. And in their final act of desperation, they sealed Ethan away, not as a prisoner, but as their last hope, the only one capable of stopping them. And now, they were free again. Captain Kari's instinct screamed at him. He lifted his plasma rifle and fired at the closest shadowy figure. The blast hit the creature's center mass, exploding in a bright burst of energy. The creature didn't even flinch. Instead, it turned its head toward him. And then it moved. It blurred, a distortion of light and space closing the distance instantly. A single blackened hand reached out. Kari barely had time to scream before the thing touched him. And then, his body began to dissolve. Not burned. Not vaporized. Just erased. As if he had never existed. His warriors screamed. And then the Echoes attacked. Ethan watched the carnage. His heartbeat slowed, his vision sharp and focused. The part of him that was once human felt a pang of regret. The part of him that had fought this war before knew what needed to be done. Vice Captain Relkjaer grabbed Ethan's arm, desperation in his alien eyes. You have to help us, please. If you don't, Ethan's voice was calm. You should have left me asleep. Then he moved. Faster than sight. Faster than thought. One of the Echoes lunged at a Vrain soldier, its inky black form reaching out. Ethan tore through it. His fist pierced its body and the creature screamed, not a sound but a vibration that shattered reality around it. It collapsed into dust. But Ethan wasn't done. The Echoes turned toward him as if they recognized him. As if they remembered what he was. The first one lunged. Ethan caught it by the throat. The moment his fingers wrapped around it, the creature convulsed. Then it erupted into nothingness. The others hesitated. And for the first time, the Vrain saw something impossible. The Echoes were afraid of him. But fear was not enough to stop them. The entire swarm rushed him at once. Ethan exhaled. And then he let go. His body reacted before his mind did. The ancient instincts of a soldier who had fought this war before took over. He became a blur, tearing through the echoes, his movements impossibly fast, impossibly precise. He ripped them apart, one by one, breaking them down at a fundamental level. And yet they kept coming. Because Ethan wasn't at full strength. Not yet. Just as the battle reached its breaking point, the sky lit up. New ships descended through the atmosphere, sleek and predatory, their hulls glowing with the unmistakable red insignia of the SCI-FI Dominion. Vice Captain Relkair's face drained of color. No. No, no, no. Ethan turned, his glowing eyes narrowing. Friends of yours? Relkair shook his head violently. No. They're worse. They're the reason we needed you. Ethan sighed. Of course they are. The SCI-FI fleet began their assault. The echoes turned their attention toward them. And for the first time in centuries, Ethan Cross smiled. Because now he had a reason to fight. Now, three sides stood on Exer 4. The Vrain, desperate and terrified. The SCI-Fi's ruthless conquerors. The echoes, an unstoppable force of oblivion. And in the middle of it all, Ethan Cross, the last warrior of a forgotten war. The SCI-Fi's Dominion did not believe in subtlety. Their fleet descended through the storm-choked sky, sleek and predatory, their hulls bristling with plasma cannons. Their red insignia burned like a bleeding sun against the backdrop of war. Ethan stood in the center of it all, watching both his enemies prepare to annihilate each other. The echoes, inhuman and shifting, turned their burning eyes toward the new arrivals. The SCI-Fi's, arrogant and battle-hardened, trained their cannons on Ethan. And the Vrain? The few remaining warriors simply tried to survive. Vice Captain Relkair, gasping for breath, stumbled toward Ethan. You have to get us off this planet? Ethan didn't even turn his head. His voice was calm. No. Relkair froze. No? Ethan tilted his head. You wanted a weapon. His eyes burned. Now watch. Then all hell broke loose. Admiral Vorkan of the SCI-Fi's Dominion had crushed over 100 planetary rebellions in his lifetime. He had burned entire civilizations to ash. But never, not once, had he encountered something like this. He had expected the Vrain resistance. He had expected some ancient relic, maybe a human bioweapon. But instead he found two nightmares. The first was the human himself. The second? The echoes. His bridge officers shouted reports. Admiral, our targeting systems are failing. The creatures are disrupting energy readings. Something is overriding our communications. Then the echoes attacked. Hundreds of them rose into the sky, flowing like living shadows, tearing into the SCI-Fi's warships. The first cruiser simply vanished, erased from existence in an instant. Another ship collapsed into itself, its matter unwinding into dust. Admiral Vorkan gritted his teeth. Fire everything. Kill them all. But the weapons didn't matter. Because you can't kill something that doesn't exist. Ethan watched the chaos unfold. The SCI-Fi's, so proud, so certain of their dominance, were learning a lesson the hard way. They had always believed they were the apex predators of the galaxy. But now they had met the things that hunted predators. Ethan took a deep breath. He could feel it now. The connection. The thing that made him different. The same reason the echoes feared him. Because he was the only thing that could stop them. Memories surged back, flashes of the forgotten war. He had been one of the last. A soldier, augmented beyond human limits. Designed not just to fight but to erase the erasers. And he had done it before. Ethan cracked his knuckles. Time to do it again. Vice Captain Relkair watched as Ethan walked forward, unarmed. Straight toward the echoes. Straight into the storm of oblivion. Relkair's breath caught. He's insane. The echoes turned toward Ethan, sensing something different. Ethan raised a single hand. The echoes hesitated. And then Ethan spoke. I remember you now. A ripple of raw power exploded outward. The echoes screamed. For the first time they staggered backward. And then Ethan attacked. The battle turned instantly. Ethan moved faster than light, weaving through the echoes like a ghost, his fists tearing through their bodies, not with strength but with something deeper. Every time he touched an echo it didn't just die. It ceased to exist. The air boiled with his presence, his movements shattering the rules of physics. The echoes, once unstoppable, panicked. And for the first time since the war long past, they did something no one thought possible. They ran. Admiral Vorkan watched in stunned horror as the impossible unfolded. The echoes were retreating. Not because of his fleet. But because of one man. One human. A human that was supposed to be extinct. His mind raced. This wasn't just a weapon. This was something far worse. If the SCI-Fi's Dominion couldn't control him, they had to kill him. All ships, target the human. Ethan sensed it before they fired. The ZYX warships, dozens of them, turned their cannons toward him. Vice Captain Relkar screamed. No. Don't. Too late. Plasma lances and energy torpedoes rained down toward Ethan. And for a moment Relkar thought it was over. Then, everything stopped. The plasma bolts froze in midair. The torpedoes halted, vibrating violently. And Ethan? Ethan turned toward the fleet. And he spoke just 2 words. Wrong move. The sky ripped apart. The warships imploded, their energy folding in on themselves. No fire. No explosion. Just erasure. In an instant, half the ZYX fleet was gone. Admiral Vorken screamed as his ship barely escaped the carnage. And then, Ethan turned his glowing eyes toward him. Run. And the ZYX, for the first time in their history, did exactly that. When the dust settled, only Ethan and the few surviving Vrain remained. Vice Captain Relkar, trembling, approached him. His voice was weak. What are you? Ethan looked up at the sky, where the rift was beginning to close. And for the first time he answered honestly. I'm the last mistake humanity made before they disappeared. Relkar swallowed. And the echoes? Ethan's jaw clenched. They weren't destroyed. They were just waiting for me to wake up. And then, for the first time since waking up, Ethan felt true fear. Because he knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The war was never over. It was simply waiting. Waiting for the human to wake up. And now, the universe would suffer for it. Previously in Chapter 4. Ethan Cross regained his full strength and tore through the echoes, shadow-like entities capable of erasing existence itself. The echoes retreated, an act previously thought impossible. The ZYX Dominion, realizing Ethan was far too powerful to control, attempted to kill him with their full fleet. Ethan stopped time itself, then erased half the ZYX fleet with a single command. Admiral Vorkan and the surviving ZYX forces fled, knowing they had just made an enemy they could never defeat. The rift in space began closing, but Ethan understood the horrifying truth. This was only the beginning. The echoes had not been destroyed. They were waiting. The fall of the ZYX fleet was not a quiet event. The moment Ethan erased half their warships, something happened across the galaxy. Old machines, forgotten in deep space, powered on. AI constructs, buried in the archives of dead civilizations, activated. And across dozens of systems, an ancient distress beacon, one that had not been heard for 1,000 years, sent out its message. A simple transmission in a language no living being should have been able to understand. The human is awake. And the universe shuddered. Deep in the heart of the galaxy, within the imperial citadel of the Concordance, the most powerful rulers of the known universe gathered. The Prime Minister of the Vrail Consortium, an ancient reptilian species that ruled entire sectors. The High Theologian of the Zendarii, a race that claimed to have seen the birth of time itself. The Elder Mind of the Kroth Collective, a vast neural intelligence spread across 1 million machines. And Admiral Vorkan of the ZYX Dominion, who now stood before them, his face twisted in anger and barely concealed fear. The chamber was filled with silence. Then the Kroth Collective spoke, its voice a vibrating mechanical hum. Explain what happened on Excerpt 4. Vorkan clenched his fists. The humans are extinct? Pause. Then the Vrail Prime Minister hissed. You sound uncertain. Vorkan exhaled slowly. We found one. Alive. For the first time in 1,000 years, a meeting of the Council of Titans fell into utter silence. Then the Elder Mind of the Kroth spoke again. Impossible. Vorkan's voice darkened. I saw it with my own eyes. And that wasn't even the worst part. The Zendarii High Theologian leaned forward. Then tell us, Warlord. What could possibly be worse than an awakened human? Vorkan's eyes were shadowed. The echoes? The moment Vorkan spoke the name, alarms erupted across the council chamber. Across the galactic core, deep space sensors began screaming. The Elder Mind of the Kroth froze mid-sentence. The Zendarii turned pale. The Vrail Prime Minister's slit eyes widened in sheer horror. Because for the first time since the war that had supposedly never happened, their sensors detected an echo. Not on Excerpt 4. But everywhere. In the distant sectors of the galaxy, entire colonies went silent. On the industrial world of Jorvis 9, workers screamed as their bodies erased into nothingness. A fleet of Kroth warships vanished, leaving no wreckage behind. The Vrail Prime Minister's homeworld trembled, as strange shadows flickered on the edges of reality itself. And in the void of space, a voice whispered, a soundless, formless entity echoing across time. We have waited. We have learned. And now we will finish what we started. The echoes had returned. And this time they had no intention of running. Back on Excerpt 4, Vice Captain Relkire stood on shaking legs, staring at Ethan. His voice was barely a whisper. What are they? Ethan didn't answer immediately. He just stared at the darkened sky, where the rift had almost fully closed. The weight of the war settled back onto his shoulders. Finally he spoke. You don't want to know. Relkire grabbed him. I think I do. Because my people are dying and we don't have the luxury of ignorance anymore. Ethan sighed. And then for the first time he told the truth. 1,000 years ago humanity wasn't fighting for conquest. They weren't fighting for power. They were fighting for survival. The echoes had not been some external alien force. They had been created. By humans. Ethan's voice was grim. We wanted to understand the universe. So we built the first echo. Vice Captain Relkire whispered, what was it? Ethan looked at him. A mistake. It had started as a quantum AI experiment, an attempt to create something that could predict reality itself. Instead, they had built something that could rewrite it. And the echoes? They had learned. First, they erased history. Then they erased entire planets. Humanity had fought. But they lost. And in the end, Ethan was one of the last weapons they created. Not a savior. A containment field. And now, because the Vrain had woken him up, the echoes knew where to find him. And they were coming. In the farthest reaches of space, the first true wave of echoes began their invasion. Entire planets vanished. Empires fell overnight. And deep within the Imperial Citadel, the Council of Titans finally understood their mistake. Because Ethan Cross had not been their enemy. He had been their warning. And now there was no stopping it. The war that was erased from history had begun again. And this time, humanity wasn't there to stop it. Back on Excerpt 4, Ethan turned to Relkire and the remaining Vrain. His voice was empty. I should never have woken up. Relkire swallowed. But you did. And now we have to fight. Ethan's fists clenched. Because now he had a choice. He could run. Or he could finish what he started. He exhaled. And then Ethan Cross made his decision. He was going to war. The first wave came without warning. Across the galaxy, echoes poured through rifts in space, a tide of darkness that unmade reality itself. The Kroth Collective's homeworld vanished in seconds. The vast neural network that had ruled for 1,000 years erased in an instant. The Zendariai's holy temples crumbled into dust. The ancient race that had witnessed the birth of the universe was silenced forever. Entire fleets, ships, soldiers, planets, ceased to exist. And the echoes? They didn't speak. They didn't negotiate. They consumed. The last war had begun. Back on Excerpt 4, Ethan stood on the ruins of the battlefield, staring into the storm of chaos unfolding across the stars. Vice Captain Relkire, battered and bloodied, limped to his side. Ethan, what do we do? Ethan's expression was hollow. For the first time in 1,000 years he had been given a choice. Run. Or fight. His hands curled into fists. He was tired. So damn tired. But if he didn't fight, no one would. When the echoes descended upon Excerpt 4, expecting another easy victory, Ethan met them. And this time he didn't hold back. He moved faster than light, his body warping space itself as he tore through the first wave of echoes. His first strike sent a shockwave that ripped the ground apart for miles. His second strike annihilated dozens of echoes at once. His third strike broke reality itself. The echoes screamed not in pain but in fear. Because the last weapon of humanity had returned. And he wasn't fighting to survive. He was fighting to end them. On the Imperial Citadel, the remaining rulers of the galaxy watched the battle in horror. Ethan Cross was destroying the echoes. But he was also rewriting reality itself. The Zendarii High Theologian gasped. He's using the same power as them? Admiral Vorkan clenched his jaw. If he wins, what happens to the rest of us? The answer was simple. Nothing could stop him. The Vrail Prime Minister whispered the one thought none of them dared voice. We have to kill him. Ethan sensed it before it happened. The moment the Council of Titans issued the order. Across the galaxy, every remaining fleet, ZYX warships, Vrail battlecruisers, even the shattered remnants of the Kroth Collective, turned their weapons toward Excerpt 4. They weren't just going to kill Ethan. They were going to erase the entire planet. Vice Captain Relkire's face drained of color. Ethan. Too late. The barrage began. A wave of energy cannons, antimatter bombs, quantum warheads, enough firepower to obliterate a star. It all fell toward Excerpt 4. And toward Ethan Cross. For a single moment Ethan felt something strange. Not fear. Not anger. Acceptance. They had always feared him. Even after everything he had done. Even after everything he had sacrificed. They had feared what he could become. And now they had made the worst mistake of all. Because Ethan Cross was done playing by their rules. As the barrage struck the surface of Exert 4, the planet exploded. A detonation so massive, so impossibly powerful, that it tore through spacetime itself. The Council of Titans watched in triumph, only for their victory to turn to terror. Because when the light faded, Ethan Cross was still standing. Not just alive. Changed. Something inside him had broken free. Something beyond human. Something beyond the echoes. He looked up at the stars, at the ships that had just tried to erase him. His voice echoed across the cosmos. Your rule was simple. Do not wake the human. Now you will understand why. The stars dimmed. Ethan raised his hand. And across the galaxy, the fleets of every empire that had betrayed him began to vanish. Not destroyed. Erased. The Council of Titans screamed in horror as their fleets, millions of ships, trillions of lives, vanished from existence. The ZYX Dominion. Gone. The Vrail Consortium. Gone. The Zendarii Empire. Gone. In mere seconds, the greatest civilizations in history were nothing but a memory. And Ethan? Ethan closed his eyes. And for the first time since the war began, there was silence. Vice Captain Relkar, the last survivor of the Vrain, stared at Ethan in absolute terror. What have you done? Ethan exhaled. I ended it. Relkar swallowed. So what happens now? Ethan looked up at the empty sky. Now there's only one rule. Relkar's voice shook. And what's that? Ethan's eyes burned like dying stars. Never wake me up again. Ethan Cross was never seen again. The echoes vanished, retreating into the void. The surviving species rebuilt, whispering of the day the human destroyed the old order. But in the dark corners of the universe, among the ruins of forgotten empires, one message remained, carved into the walls of dead worlds, etched onto the remains of fallen civilizations. A single warning. A new rule. Do not wake the human. Ever. The end. Final thoughts and next steps. This concludes the story, but if you'd like an epilogue expansion, a sequel, or a spin-off, let me know. We could explore. What happens to Ethan after? A new enemy rising after centuries of peace? A hidden civilization that survived and remembers the war? Let me know what you'd like next.